So you've never played a tabletop RPG before. That's okay, because in this video, we're going to tell you just some of the different ways that you and your group can play a tabletop RPG. I am Juice, and this is Master the Game. I just want to give a quick shout out to the software D&D Beyond. If you're playing D&D and you're not using D&D Beyond, you are missing out. So head on over to D&D Beyond. You'll just need a Twitch account to get started and check it out. See what they have to offer. I guarantee you it will improve your gaming experience beyond your wildest dreams. Make sure you head on over to rpgjuice.com, where you can get caught up on the latest videos, the latest news, and blog posts from Juice himself. If this is your first time here on Master the Game, I would appreciate it if you would smash that subscribe button, give us a like, and make sure you leave a comment with any of your thoughts about how to play a tabletop RPG. So there's a lot of different ways that you and your group can play a tabletop RPG. The first thing I want to talk about is the role-playing aspect. Many groups role-play differently. Some get very into their character and go as far as dressing up and using props at the table. If speaking in character is your thing, these groups love to do that with heavy accents and all the different mannerisms their character would have. Some groups don't do the dress up part, but they get just as into role-playing their character by using the accents. Then there's groups that don't do as much of the accents, for example, speaking in third person. In fact, it's really common for newer players to speak more in the third person. If you want your group to speak more in character, take the lead and do it yourself. Speak with an accent while you talk. Try to get the mannerisms of your character down, and I think you'll see that more people at the table will be more comfortable doing that as well. Some groups really like to use miniature representation, and others don't, and they prefer a more theater of the mind experience. Now, there's pros and there's cons to both of those. For example, one pro with miniatures is you always know where your character is in relation to others, and there's not really a way to get that mixed up. Whereas with a theater of the mind game, sometimes players have different ideas of where their placement is or where monsters are, and so miniatures can really take care of that. The one thing about miniatures that people complain about, though, is that you're more restricted. You're stuck within more boundaries of rules. And a lot of people who play role-playing games play it because they want to escape the rules of things like video games. That's one thing that, you kind of got to get a feel for what your group prefers and what's going to make your game more fun for the whole group. A lot of people who come into this hobby are in it because they like the freedom it provides. And so Theater of the Mind gives you the ultimate freedom if you have a game master who will give you that freedom. You'll see this in games like Acquisitions Incorporated, where the player will say, hey, is there a chandelier in this room or in this dungeon or, in this forest? And Chris Perkins tends to let Patrick's character know that, yes, there is. And so then the player can swing from the chandelier. You could apply this to anything, but this is something that is really big in a Theater of the Mind game where you can have things there that you didn't necessarily describe. It's a little bit harder to do that when you're using miniatures. You can still do that. So if you think that your group wants more freedom and wants to be able to improv a little more, then I would say that Theater of the Mind is probably your best bet. But if you have a more group that's a little more analytical and tactical, then you will probably want to think about using miniature. If you have a split group, mix it up. Use your Theater of the Mind for some encounters and use your miniatures and flip mats and terrain for others. When you're sitting down to play a role-playing game, the thing to remember is there's no wrong way to play as long as you're having fun. I know that goes against my tagline at the beginning of the video that I'm going to show you how to play role-playing games the right way. I got news for you. If you're having fun, you're doing it the right way. When you sit down to play, don't sweat the small stuff. Just get lost in your character. Have a good time. Don't worry about what other people think, because everyone there is in the same boat as you. They're just looking to have some fun. Now, some games are going to require you to roll a lot more dice than others. Some game masters might even ask you to make a roll for almost anything. On the other end of the scale, there are game masters who will probably let you get away with less dice rolling to keep the game going, to keep the improv and roleplay and in-character stuff going. To say that you're always going to do this or you're always going to do that just is not the case. When you sit down to play, what you're going to do is you're going to have a scenario presented to you by the game master. Sometimes your game master is going to have a very generic, open scenario, and other times it's going to be very well laid out, detailed, everything in the room explained. Once this happens, you as the player are going to say what you want to do, whether it's you're talking to other characters in that room, whether it's fighting something. Go in as much detail as you want as a player as well. Don't get too caught up in wondering what's on your character sheet, because that doesn't matter. In a role-playing game, you have free reign to do anything. The only limits that I would say you should try to stay within are making sure your group is comfortable with your decisions. Don't needlessly murder innocents in your games, for example, unless it's a game that seems to warrant that. Don't go and be disruptive for the sake of being disruptive. That's not fun for anybody there. What would your character do? And don't take this too far into the extreme either. A lot of times in groups, there are players who play their characters in a disruptive way, and they hide behind the excuse that this is what my character would do. That's not a good justification for being a player that nobody wants at the table. What would your character do? Is it something that you think would cause a problem in a really negative way for your group? Or maybe there is, some tension there that you want to have, and that's okay. Sometimes inter-party conflict, if kept to a minimum, is actually a lot of fun. Banter between player characters can be a lot of fun. So I'm not saying to shy away from doing stuff, but again, really think about what would your character do in the scenario presented, and just do it. Describe it, act it out. Don't be afraid to, actually sit in your chair and act out what your player would do, whether it's, they rest their head on their hand, or they wipe their forehead of sweat, and don't be afraid to actually physically do these things as you're explaining it, because again, it will help everybody else at the table be as descriptive as you can, and I guarantee you it'll be a lot of fun for everybody. One good tip when you're playing a role-playing game that I really want to mention is don't be afraid to add to your character's backstory. For example, mentioning things like, yes, this reminds me of that time that my mother used to take me fishing, when you're down at the pond or the river. Or, this is like that one time when such and such happened. Don't be afraid to do these things. It provides more insight into your character, especially if it's something that would explain why your character is a certain way. For example, if you have any phobias as a character, a great way to do that is to show the other players at the table that your character is afraid of these things. Sometimes what I like to do is I'll monologue my character's thoughts, and it's not so much for the other players' characters at the table, but it's to give the other players a peek a little bit deeper inside of what my character is like. And I think this really makes the game more fun for me as well, because I get deeper into character when I do this, but I think it makes the other players at the table understand my character more and like my character more. So again, please take risks. Give insight into your character's thoughts. Don't hog the spotlight. This is something that newer players don't tend to do very much. Very experienced players sometimes do. Share the spotlight. Don't be afraid to pass the focus onto another player at your table. If the scenario is presented and you really don't know what to do, or maybe you have an idea but another player at your table hasn't spoke, maybe you say, Fred, what do you think of this? Pull another character into the scene. Pull them into the decision-making process or thought process, and you will not only make it more fun for you, but you will make it more fun for those players at the table who weren't involved. I encourage you to do that as well. It's called sharing the spotlight. It's a great way to keep the whole group involved so everybody is engaged. And your game master will really appreciate it too. Each game is going to have different rules, and your game master will guide you through some of them if you've never played before. Don't be too worried about the rules. The rules should be the last thing you're thinking of. You should be thinking about, what do you want to do in this scenario? What would your character want to do? Do you think it's advantageous as a character to do something. What's your character's initial response to these things? What are your character's peeves, and would they actually put themselves in a situation like this? If not, rather than just say, my character is not going there, try to convince the group to do a different tactic. Like, hey guys, I don't know if going down into this well is a good idea. Maybe there's another access point through a cave that is a little bit safer. Let's go look for one. Because maybe your character's afraid of heights, and climbing down a rope into a dark well does not sound like a fun idea. Engage other players and really focus on better ways to achieve some of the same goals that are more in line with your character at times. If you do that scenario where you're looking for a cave, you don't find one, the game master says, nope, you don't find one, and the players still want to go down it, still have your character go along with it. Go down the well, but you can role play that they're hesitant, they're scared, they're shaky, their palms are sweaty. It adds depth to your character. So these are all great things to think about and to do in your games. When it comes down to it though, even if you're not going to be, all in with all this, just slowly work at it and you'll eventually become a really good role play. As long as everyone's having fun, you're doing it right. Focus on the fun and you'll have a blast. That about sums it up for this. I again want to encourage you to go over to my website, rpgjuice.com, where you can get the latest news, you can see the latest videos and blog posts. I've got some downloads over there. It would mean a lot if you just go and check that out. Smash that subscribe button. I know if you're still watching this, you liked it, so give me a like. And leave a comment about what your thoughts were on this video. I am Juice. This was Master the Game. Thank you. Game on.